Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod here to talk about Michigan State's 77-69 loss to the Kansas Jayhawks in the Champions Classic. Uh, on the bright side, this is not the last time Michigan State will play Kansas in the Champions Classic. They re-upped for another 3 years, so we'll get this at least another 4 games out of this beginning of the season challenge, I guess. But it was a game where Michigan State really struggled to hit any jump shots, only stayed close with fast break layups, free throws, and some offensive rebounding at times. But despite Kansas also having a miserable night shooting, they at least made a few shots and pulled away at the end of the game in a game that was, got up to 10 points at halftime. And then I guess Jace Richardson had that 4-point play to end the first half to cut it to 6. Michigan State tied it a couple times second half, and then Kansas at the very end hit it just a few threes, and Michigan State missed a couple easy shots. And anyway, then it ends up being a 8-point victory for Kansas.
Yeah, I am on balance reasonably pleased with the way they played. And this is why. When you look at it, they really did essentially, and I'm talking about collectively, everything that they needed to do to win this game, except for one really important thing. They were 3 for 24 from 3. Now, if you think that's who they are as a shooting team, okay, be worried. I don't think that's who they are. We are having exactly the same discussion that we had at this time last year. The difference is that team last year had more problems than just 3-point shooting. This one does not in the same way. They are in my opinion, significantly improved rebounding team, at least in the early going. And tonight wasn't dominant, but we didn't figure it would be dominant. Kansas is going to be tough to have a dominating offensive rebounding night against. They were good enough. They actually outscored Kansas in second chance points. They are significantly better in terms of being able to get into transition. No question. They are massively better in terms of getting into the free throw line. Now, you mentioned those things as if, well, those were just kind of things that kept them in the game. No.
Yeah, right.
No, that's all really important stuff and a key as to why this should be a better team and a better offensive team than they were last year. I think their half-court offense is, generally speaking, better in terms of the quality of shot they generate, and in some respects, at least, the results that they're generating. And that's down to a lot of things, but most of all, it's down to Jeremy Fears, who I thought was really, really good in this game, going up against a guy who's arguably the best pure point guard in America and more than holding his own. So there are a lot of things to be optimistic about, in my opinion, coming out of this game. You know, that's the number one team in the country. Now, whether you think they played like it, okay, fair enough. I don't think Kansas is coming away from this game feeling like they were dynamite either. But that's a team with a lot of weapons. And as we talked about in the preview, it's an extremely experienced team.
Yeah, that's true.
Massively more so than Michigan State. So even if you say, well, Kansas could have shot better too, okay, but they're still Kansas. They're still a team with those guys and that talent level and that experience level out there. So the fact that Michigan State was in it really the entire 40 minutes, they were never out of this game. There was never a stretch where, at least speaking for myself, there was never a stretch where until the very end where it got, wasn't going to comeback, wasn't going to happen. And, maybe there's a couple baskets that gets it to a double-digit game. But other than that, this was a competitive game throughout. And that's a positive sign that they went toe-to-toe with that team, and we're right there. So, listen, I am not coming out of this sad sack. I, not surprisingly, in taking a quick perusal of social media, which I really just should not do.
Oh, that's a bad idea. After this sort of game,
it's the usual know nothing bullshit. Understand zero about anything kind of responses from most people. If you're trying, how can you be a fan of this program for any length of time and not understand what November means and what it doesn't mean? How?
I,
How is that possible? And that's, to me, that's the thing. Like last year, yeah, they were losing games, but it was the way they were losing them that was so discouraging. This team really gave no one any room to feel good about it until they had that weird blowout of Baylor, you
yeah,
know?
right.
And then they got a little bit of momentum when they beat Indiana State after that. And then it all just kind of, sunk into a morass kind of once they got into Big Ten play.
Yeah.
Um, but this was not that, not at all. So the things that I think have to be better for this team to be better, for the most part, were in fact better tonight. So take a deep breath, people. Relax. This is. I like to think I've learned a little something about what this stuff looks like, and I don't understand why everybody doesn't. There were reasons to feel good about this team. There was also one big reason to feel frustrated that they didn't win, because this was a winnable game.
Yeah. I mean, Kansas left it out there, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's plenty of
well,
opportunities.
but,
Yeah.
or the other way I can look at it is Michigan State did enough things to give themselves that chance, because they did.
Yeah.
But it's not just, well, Kansas gave them a gift. Nah, fuck that. That's sorry. But I mean, really, they did a lot of good things in this game. Don't let that get lost in the end result on the scoreboard. You should have learned by now, college basketball, at least the Michigan State program, is, to use the old cliche, is a marathon, not a sprint. And right now they're in a better spot early in that marathon than they were last year. I feel that definitively.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Both teams took 69 field goal attempts. Michigan State obviously had a lot more free throw attempts. To your point, they had 21 attempts.
A few more.
Yeah, I guess Kansas ended up with 22, but that's mainly just because they got a bunch of fouls at the very end.
Desperation fouling at the
right.
end.
But both teams had 40 misses. I mean, neither team was shooting very well. I'm not. I don't know if to attribute either of those teams' misses to defense. I mean, I don't think like
some of it,
but
not
I don't
all
think
of
most.
it.
I think most most of the threes that Michigan State missed. Well, I shouldn't say most. A good portion of them were ones that you expect them to make. They were,
Yep.
Booker
Agreed.
within 15 feet of him. He had at least 3 of those. And then, Aikens had a couple that were ill-advised. I thought Trey Hallman had 1 or 2 good looks. I mean, the people had really good looks, but they didn't hit them.
I'm gonna
I don't know.
I'm gonna say this, and this comes with bias, and I would have to go back and rewatch it to feel definitive about this. But I really did feel Michigan State did a better job defending Kansas than the other way around.
I think that's my feeling too. Yeah.
I thought even the stuff that Kansas did that worked, which primarily was Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah.
Look, I haven't seen his shot chart, but just watching that game anecdotally, we've seen Hunter Dickinson have games when he was at Michigan, not all of them, but more than once, where he just blasted them in the post, right? That was not this game. He had some post baskets, but that wasn't where he wasn't just owning the paint in that way. What he did, a lot of his damage on were mid-range shots, which, look, we know he's capable of hitting them, but if you're playing that guy, those are the shots you want to be giving up. And I felt like Michigan State did okay with that. It didn't work because he made those shots. He wasn't making them against North Carolina the other night. He made them tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. My feeling was it's one where you just tip your hat and say, hey, guy played well. But I thought Michigan State, for the most part, had him doing the kind of things that they would feel okay with in terms of most of the shots he was getting. Now, you can always say, well, you could have been better in terms of the way your guards were denying post-entry passes, make it tougher. There's always room for that. And it's entirely possible that Tom Izzo is less pleased with that than I was watching it. But I thought they were okay there. And everybody else, man, look, KJ Adams is a good basketball player, a really good basketball player. he went 1-for-7 from the floor, and
Yeah.
those misses were earned. They
Mhm.
guarded the
Yeah.
hell out of him. Zeke Mayo, great shooter. He's been on an unbelievable heater, as we talked about. 2-for-8. They did Dwan Harris, 2-for-7. Rylan Griffin, 4-for-10. I mean, a lot of these guys, as I think back to that game, they were missing shots that were pretty well contested. And I thought
Mhm.
Michigan State often took them out of the things that they wanted to do. But they made
Yeah.
enough plays to win it. That's what you would expect from a team that's expected to be a title contender. And, we go on from there.
Yeah, I felt like just overall Michigan State just looked a little tight to start the game, and I think they
For
just weren't
sure.
able to kind of shake that because those first couple misses, I think they get in your head. I mean, as a team, I think they just sort of gets in your head. And that's for that's the one situation. We'll talk about Aikens first, I suppose. They kind of. I thought at times he looked good. I mean, defensively he's fine. Offensively he was a no show. Partly because of Kansas, but I think partly just especially the second half.
Well,
We need more from him. Just
he
like
was
more
he wasn't on the floor a ton in the second half. I know Jay
right.
Billis kept repeating that, but let me look and see if I've got his minutes played.
I don't
Yeah,
have the splits.
Jaden
Yeah.
played 26 minutes. It's not split, but I'm gonna guess he was probably, he maybe 10 or 11 in the second half. That's a guess, but
Yeah.
I think it's probably fair. He was off the floor a lot, and deservedly so, because
Yeah.
they had other guys who were playing better, you know?
Yeah. 2
Um,
points, 1 rebound, 1 for 8 from the field, 0
yeah.
for 4 from 3. I
Now,
mean, 2
now
turnovers, a block. Yeah.
he did a good job defensively,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not enough. Jaden Akins
No,
isn't
you need
supposed
more
to be,
from him.
while he's a
Right.
defensive stopper. And look, this is what we talked about. And then he had that opener against Monmouth, and you hoped, well, maybe this is where he's turning it around. I just, I made this comment on the Spartan Mag board tonight, and I really do believe this. Um, Kurtang didn't play
Right.
tonight, didn't get into the game. But I'm pretty convinced that's not because he can't play. I think he would have been fine in a game like that. It's a guess, but based on what I've seen, I
Yeah.
think he would have held up defensively. And, he is a shot maker. I don't think they're going to make any changes immediately. And I would bet against anything substantial happening until after Maui, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, the difference between this year and some other recent seasons is Izzo's got cards he can play. And, if veterans, and it wasn't just Jaden Akins, because I didn't think Trey Holloman and I don't think Trey Holloman has really played a good game yet
He
this
had a bad
season.
game. Yeah.
Yeah. Those two guys, those are veterans, those are your two captains. So,
Captains. Yeah.
they're going to get a leash. But I'm convinced we're already seeing it with Jace Richardson.
Yep.
It's taken 3 games for Jace Richardson's role to expand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I really think if we continue seeing offensive issues from those guys, I would expect that we're going to see Kurtang. I'm not saying he goes from 0 minutes to 25, but I think there will be changes because they have the capability of making some changes. They've got some guys that some other cards they can play. And, with Jaden, look, it's not an effort thing. I mean, he played good enough defense that you can't say, well, he wasn't out there working, but it's just, I just don't think I'm not remotely convinced that his best role is not essentially what it was his freshman and sophomore season.
Yep.
And it's that simple. And how
Right.
that plays out and all the rest, well, that remains to be seen. But they got to figure it out because they don't need him to score 20 a night, but they need more than that.
Yep. Let's talk about the leading scorer, Michigan State, briefly. Frankie Fidler, 24 minutes, 3 for 12 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. Hit that. I think that those last 3-point attempt. 8 for 8 from the line, though. 8 rebounds, 2 offensive. So we saw a little bit of rebounding that we haven't yet seen this season. Turnover, finished with 15 points. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm encouraged. He's got
Yeah.
a lot more that he's got. Obviously, you need more efficiency than that. For sure. His 3-point shooting looks worse than it was because he took a few of those. Now, granted, he hit one, so I guess you could say it looks better too. But he was taking some shots more or less out of desperation there down the stretch. I think he had half of his attempts came in the last couple minutes.
Yeah, could be.
The the stuff inside the arc, I'm not, look, I don't think it was a difference in this game. I think more or less it was decently officiated, but I thought there was a one of his shots in particular. I thought he'd earned a foul and he didn't get it. It was a bad no call. But that's going to happen with him because, that's the other thing. When you play the way he does and you're looking to draw contact as often as he is, there are going to be times you're not going to get a whistle, and it might result in a missed shot. That's just what it is. But I'm not going to complain about 8 free throw attempts, and he earned them. One of those, well, 2 free throws, 1 trip to the line came on an offensive rebound. But the others were all action going to the basket, exactly what you want to see from him. So I think the fact that he had 8 rebounds is also really encouraging, because that's one thing he had not been doing that I thought he could.
Yeah.
And was one of the reasons they added him. He was a good rebounder at Omaha, and I thought he would give them a boost there. So to see him grab 8 boards, that's really encouraging. I think on balance, it was not a great performance, but a step in the right direction from him, because he remains aggressive. That's the other thing. He does look to me, which is a good thing for a scorer, like he's a no conscience kind of guy. He's not going to get, we talk about what happens to Jaden if he misses his first couple shots, right? I don't think Frankie Fidler's built that way.
No, I agree.
I think he will stay aggressive, and that's a good thing because they need him to be aggressive.
Jeremy Fears, we kind of talked to him briefly. 27 minutes. He had the most minutes of anyone played the game. He had 3 for 8 from the field, 3 for 5 from the line, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 turnovers, 2 steals for 9 points.
Yeah,
And
but those numbers, they don't do justice, man. I thought he was really good in this game. I really did. The way he pushed pace, the way he made plays for people. How much better is Michigan State's pick and roll game, specifically pick and roll with the screener diving to the rim?
Suddenly Cooper looks really good.
Yeah, isn't that funny? And I think Jeremy I think half his assists came on those plays. I think he had 3 of them. He had 2 to Cooper and 1 to Zapala.
Yeah.
He changes the whole thing. And if you were going to boil it down to one reason why I like the position of this team much more than I did the team a season ago, it's with him.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if the feeling, at least my feeling, is he's only going to continue to get better. He's continuing to come back from a lot of time off. And I think he's going to continue, just even if that wasn't a factor, just with more experience, he's playing more basketball at this level. You're going to see him continue to improve, but he's such a smart player. He said just the combination of intelligence, toughness, and energy, and athleticism too, that he can just beat people down the floor. You saw him do that. You saw him run it down Kansas's throat. All right. Been a while since we've seen that.
Yeah.
Been a while.
And this is not Monmouth, right? These are highest level athletes, right? You're going
So, there's always room to get better, obviously, but I am very, very happy with what we're seeing out of Jeremy Fears. He had in Spain, he got off to a really good start in the first game. And in the last couple of games, he wasn't quite as good. I didn't think he was great in the exhibition games, but since we've started the regular season, I think he's just gotten steadily better. And I think, all things considered, especially grading on a curve for the level of competition, this was his best game. And I think it's just scratching the surface of how good he's going to be.
And it's easy to forget that he is basically a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman.
So 15th, I think it's the 15th game he's played in.
And the first game he started where he is the man, right? I mean, I don't think played 27 minutes a game last year. Maybe he did, but
Correct. Never,
yeah.
no, never got that.
So,
You're
I
right.
mean, he's the one
Role's
directing
totally different.
everything. Yeah.
Yep.
And so in that respect, it is very impressive. I mean, going up against Kansas, they're not going up against, nobody here. So
Yeah.
this is a pretty good
I
performance.
just thought the decisions that he made were
Yeah.
so good
He never made
in
mistakes
this
out
game.
there. I mean, he'd slid down the baseline when he was going so fast. He hit kind of like a
Yeah.
slick spot where he
Yep.
would have had a
That was
layup, it looked like, but
one of the two turnovers. But
yeah.
yeah, and again, very, very tough track he's playing on because the guy he was going up against in DeJuan Harris is um, kind of a good model. Now they're different in some ways. I think Fears is physically stronger, and Fears is much more of a rah-rah guy. Harris is not that. But in terms of the defensive ability, in terms of the playmaking, just truly being a real point guard and that you're making others around you better. He's a good role model. And I thought Jeremy played him basically straight up.
Yeah. And now looking at Sapala briefly, 19 minutes, 2 for 3 from the field. He had one of those lobs, 3 rebounds, just one offensive, and a block with finishing 4 points. I don't know. I mean, I thought it sometimes you saw a little bit of his limitation, I think, athletically out there, at times when you got him in space, but overall, I think
Well,
held up against, I'm not expecting him to shut down Dickinson. But
I didn't have a problem with the Dickinson stuff because again, it's one thing if it's the way we've seen it at times in the past. And I'm
yeah,
thinking back to games where, Jaxon Kohler was guarding him for a little stretch, or when they had to have Joey Hauser guard him, and you just saw guys swallowed up. The
yeah,
reason you've got guys like Zapala and Cooper on the roster is for nights like this, when they're going up against guys who, if you can't physically meet them at eye level, they can just destroy you.
yeah,
And Dickinson didn't really do that to Zapala. He hit, especially that start of the game where he got, I don't know, I think he scored their first 10 points or eight of
yeah,
their
something
first
like
10.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. None of that was, oh, he just went to work on the blocks against this guy, and this guy has no chance physically. I thought Zapala banged with him. What they were having success with was, as Jay Billis kept referring to it, that pocket pass off screen and roll. And look, if Hunter Dickinson's going to hit an 8 to 10 foot jumper, okay. I mean, that's probably the best shot you're going to get that guy to take.
yeah.
Is that. So I didn't have huge. I mean, Zapala wasn't great, but I didn't think he was a problem out there. I thought he did his job mostly,
And speaking of the guy
decently
who
enough.
did his job, I thought Cooper, this is his best game he's played, I think, since the
Yeah.
season began. 16 minutes, 2 for 2 from the field, 2 for 3 from the line, defensive rebounds, just a turnover and a
Yeah.
steal, 6 points. I mean, and he held his own inside. I thought he was, I mean, very impactful in the game and
Again,
played
did
right.
did you really feel like the only times Dickinson I felt kind of swallowed up Michigan State is when they tried to go small. There was
Yeah.
a stretch in the second half where they went with Kohler on them for a few
Mhm.
possessions, and that wasn't good.
Yeah.
And it's why when we've talked about this, and you got people clamoring for Michigan State to go small, I'm like, not against teams like this. And I'm telling you, it's not just going to be a guy at Hunter Dickinson's level. If you do that against guys that are, say, decent big men, but not dominant ones in the Big Ten, you can turn them into dominant players by doing that. So there is a role. Absolutely, there is a role for Zapala and Cooper on this team. And tonight, I thought, and again, it's hard to say, well, Dickinson scored whatever he did. What was it, 27?
Yeah, something like that.
You can't say, well, they did a great job, but you know what? For the most part, they made him kind of earn what he got. And sometimes good players will actually do that. So I was pretty happy with Carson. I thought he held his own in the post, which is, I think back to his freshman year where he just didn't have the strength to bang with Dickinson, and he got swallowed up by Dickinson. That wasn't happening tonight. Those guys were able to bang.
Well, let's look at the 4 spot then. Primarily Jaxon Kohler and Xavier Booker. Kohler, 23 minutes, 5 for 14 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, hit his free throw, 10 rebounds. So he led the team in rebounding, 4 of those offensive, assist, turnover, a block, finished with 12 points. I mean, especially from post standpoint, we started seeing those post moves actually
Yeah.
cash in on him a few times too. So it's interesting that Kansas is the first team I've seen not actually bring a double when Kohler's got the ball and just let him kind of go to
Yeah.
work, which is kind of interesting.
Well, it depended on the matchup, and I thought Michigan State was pretty good with that. Um, the one point that I thought he really struggled was he tried to do some stuff against Dickinson.
Yeah.
And I
Which I
thought,
think he
and
did as a freshman,
he
was
did.
successful. That was like his
Yeah,
only really good game.
it
Yeah. As a
was
freshman.
he missed one time, he missed a mid-range jumper. It was a legit
Hmm.
shot, not a bad choice. Then he tried to go to work on him in the post, and it wasn't a terrible miss, but it missed. And I think in part it was because Dickinson just stayed big.
Yeah.
And the other guys they had that he was going up against couldn't do that. I thought there were segments where, KJ Adams, a really good player. You didn't see it tonight, but KJ Adams is a really, really good defensive player. But he's a little bit, he's maybe 6'7". So Jaxon has a little bit of size on him. And I thought Jaxon just worked him.
Hmm.
He actually did a pretty good job against Badunga too. I
Yeah.
think I think Badunga got one rejection on him, but then he scored on him. And yeah, I mean, the 5 for 14 from the floor doesn't look pretty, but I think that's a little bit misleading. I thought Jaxon played his ass off. And
Yeah.
that's another really, really good sign, in my opinion. The shots he missed tonight were not the ones that make you wonder about him in
Yeah.
the past.
He
They
wasn't
were
missing the
not
bunnies all the time.
right.
Yeah.
They
Right.
were not, oh, he had a wide open layup. Like the shots he missed, hey, he's going up against a veteran team with a lot of size that
Yeah.
contested those shots well, and some of them aren't going to go. Okay. And obviously he took a bunch of threes, which, some of that was circumstance related, but you'd hope for a little less than 5 attempts from him. I don't think he's that.
Yeah.
Not yet. Not yet.
Booker only played 13 minutes. 0 for 5 from the field. 4 of those were threes. Had 1 offensive rebound, a turnover and a
Yeah.
block.
Yeah.
Finished nothing, no points. I mean, he
Look,
played 13 minutes. And it was I don't know if he's a little tight, like a big game sort of stage. I don't know.
well, he had open threes that he didn't hit.
Yeah.
If he hits those shots, and we know he's fully capable of making them, we're having a different discussion. But I will say this, um, and it's something that we've kind of talked about and we've wondered about, what's the rotation going to be like? What's that going to look like ultimately? And I think we also just discussed it. We were talking about, well, if this continues, if some of this stuff continues offensively, does Kurtang start to get minutes at somebody else's expense?
Yeah.
And I think tonight you saw Tom Izzo's not screwing around.
No.
Xavier Booker was not doing much. He made one really good defensive play early in the second half where he
Yep.
came over, kind of blocked. I don't think it was a shot. It was an attempted pass by Dickinson, but he blocked and it led to a turnover.
Hmm.
Other than that, there's not a lot you can say positively about what X did. But Jaxon Kohler was getting some things done and was playing his ass off. And so Jaxon Kohler and Cohen Carr, who also played hard and got some things done, those guys got minutes.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
yeah.
and Book didn't. And you know what? That's just how the story goes. And I was glad to see it because Book didn't deserve those minutes. Other
Yeah.
guy,
I mean,
or maybe another way of putting it is, other guys were doing things that merited playing more.
yeah, they earned it more. Yeah. Yeah. Cone
Yeah.
Carr, 21 minutes. I mean, the guy, he plays with intensity now that, I mean, it's been consistent every single time we've seen him play this season.
Yeah.
Exhibition, regular season games, 3 for 5 from the field. He missed that wide open 3, which, who didn't today? 2 for 2 from the line, which is nice to see. 3 rebounds, 1
Yeah.
offensive, but he had his hand on about 10 different rebounds that he did not
Yep.
get. A
Yep.
couple steals, 8
Agreed.
points, played a great game. And almost, looking at when you see Booker come off the floor, I almost think that after that first substitution, Michigan State offensively has looked better most of the year.
Yeah, I think that's been true. Because the starting lineup really has not, done it collectively. And some of the reserves have played better, but I really liked the way Cohen played. I really did. I think he's remaining aggressive in looking to get to the basket off the dribble. That's a big, big deal. And if that continues, man, he's going to continue producing. It's just that simple. Like a guy with his athleticism, and he's clearly gotten stronger, and he feels more confident. Um, that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see.
Jace Richardson, I'm pretty sure he's a freshman. 20 minutes, 3 for 5, 1 for 1 for 3. Had his free throw to make the 4-point play at the end of the first half. 3 defensive rebounds, 2 assists, no turnovers, 8 points. He did not seem at all rattled that they're playing Kansas, number 1 Kansas, like this first big game. I mean, I don't know. I mean, at some point we just need to stop saying this, but I mean, I still continue to be impressed by his poise as a freshman, and he just goes out there and just looks good.
My only disappointment was that they weren't able to find ways for him to get shot attempts in the second half. That is disappointing, but nothing else. I just think when we're already seeing it, so he's up to, what did he play in the first game? I think it was 11 minutes in the opener.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think pretty sure. He's already at 20.
Yeah.
And that's merited. That's on the merits. So if he's playing this way and Jaden Akins and Trey Holloman aren't, I want to see Jace Richardson on the floor. Tom Izzo has these cards to play, and he needs to continue to play them, and I think he will. Jace Richardson, there's absolutely no reason to think that, well, you've got to treat him like a freshman. How is anything he's doing looking less poised, less together than Akins and Holloman?
Yeah, no,
it's not.
Totally agree.
So he's real. As I say, my only disappointment is they weren't able to get him more shots, because that kid, he did have a play in the second half that wasn't for a score, but it was one of his 2 assists.
So good.
To Kohler, I think.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Jeremy Fears made one of his few bad decisions, kind of got himself in a bad spot, picked up the dribble, and was kind of caught there right around the free throw line. And Jace made just a great cut to make himself available, and then takes the ball down the lane, gets Dickinson to commit to try to stop him, dishes to Kohler for a layup. It was beautiful. Kid is a star. I zero doubt in my mind. And you just, in the modern era, man, you can never assume these things, but for a variety of reasons. But man, the idea of he and Jeremy Fears together for a while, that's a good thought. If you're a Michigan State fan, it's a really good thought, because those guys share a lot in common in terms of the basketball intelligence that they play with, the toughness that they play with, and the compete level.
Yeah. Well, I would not be surprised. I mean, if things continue as they are and it continues to get better, I mean, freshman player of the year in the Big Ten, it would not shock me. We'll see.
There's a lot of, you don't know, a lot of players, with roles that different guys are in. There are going to be guys who aren't competing for minutes.
Depends on the success of the team too,
Jace
and all that sorts of things.
But I think the bigger question, honestly, and I think it's there's going to be a long leash, and you've got to think about what it does to everybody on your roster. But you do have to wonder. I don't necessarily expect a change in the starting lineup, but at what point does a change in the balance of minutes come? Because right now, the only guy I would put in that backcourt group on the same level as Jace is Jeremy Fears. Those are your 2 guys right now.
Yeah.
And so at what point, how far does it go before you start? Like, for example, is there maybe a scenario where instead of that, just before the under 4 timeout, where they come in with the change and Trey Holloman comes in to run the point, maybe Jace Richardson starts getting that turn.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's, you gotta start thinking about it at some stage if things don't change. I think they will probably change. but that's
Yeah,
what you got to
until
think
then.
about it.
We'll go through the Brothers Just You Gutters. Brian just mentioning that Jace Richardson played 22 and then 17 minutes the first two games. I just looked it up, so you would
Okay.
get
All
an
right.
idea.
Maybe it was an exhibition game then. There was a game where he
I think
played
you're right.
11.
Yep, I think you're
Yeah.
right. All right. So Brothers Just You Gutters, it is fall. There's leaves still falling over the place. They're in your gutters. They're blocking up as it rains. You have it spilling over the side of your gutters, plugs up your downspouts. You need somebody to clean those out. Make sure you call the Brothers Just You Gutters, like whether you're on the east side or the west side of the state. They do fantastic work. Maybe you just need them repaired. Maybe you need them replaced. Maybe you just need just leaf guards on. Come clean it out. Whatever you need done, the Brothers Just You Gutters will take care of it. They should be your first call whenever you have any issues with your water drainage in your house or your business. Whether it's a big job or a little job, just like one section, they can handle anything. And listeners of the show get 10% off if they mention Final Four when they get their estimate. You can find a way to get the link to the estimate at our support page at the Final Four is on the schedule.com/support. And they sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter, which we said was Mayo. And Zeke Mayo played 33 minutes. He was 2 for 8 from the field, 0 for 3 from 3. He had a couple of free throws, 10 defensive rebounds, 7 assists, 2 turnovers, a steal, and 6 points. So it doesn't sound like he was totally coming the gutter, but from a scoring standpoint, he was really neutralized. He didn't really do a whole lot offensively. So
Yeah,
I think in that sense, he did well.
Yeah, exactly. He was really good defensively. Billis was giving him a lot of credit for Jaden Akins. I'm sure some of that's true. Uh, so yeah, I mean, to Mayo's credit, he found other ways to impact the game. I mean, 10 rebounds
Yeah.
for a six. I think he's 6'3".
Well, there are a lot of long
6'3"
rebounds
guard.
off those
Yeah,
threes.
right, exactly. But they all count.
Yep.
And I'd
Exactly.
gladly take that from MSU's guards. And 7 assists, that's not really been his game. He's primarily, I don't just mean at Kansas, I mean in general, he's been a scorer. So, and then add in the defense. He did everything except score, but in terms of scoring, Michigan State locked him down. Give Jaden, that's what I said. It's not that Jaden was a total zero out there. Jaden guarded.
Yeah.
And he guarded Mayo a lot, and other guys did too. But yeah, I think you'd have to say they kind of kept him in the gutter.
And just briefly, I mean, AJ Storr, boy, he looks like a totally different player than he did last year. Kind of sulking and just not in the. It just doesn't seem like in the game. I don't know if that's just because he's coming off the bench or.
I'm not surprised. I mean, he was in foul. He was in foul trouble this whole game, and so he only played 12 minutes. He did bust a big 3 on Michigan State.
He was a huge
right
3,
before he fouled out. It was at a point where MSU had some momentum. I think they tied the game.
Yeah, they tied it. Yeah.
But he really wasn't able to do a whole bunch. And I say I'm not surprised. I would have been surprised if you would have told me that in September. But we mentioned it in the preview. This has been coming. I mean, he is not starting. And he's not really, I mean, the foul trouble was really, my recollection of it is that it wasn't necessarily smart plays that he was making.
No, they weren't. They were usually step too slow, kind of out of position, maybe, or going for a rebound.
Trying to, exactly. Yeah. Just poor judgment.
Yeah.
And not even just bad execution, just poor judgment. And that's, look, at Kansas in general, but this team in particular, because like with Tom Izzo, Bill Self has a lot of options.
Exactly.
If you're not playing smart basketball, or you're sulking or whatever it is, Bill Self say, "Hey, I got Ryland Griffin. I got a bunch of other guys. I can play pass more. I can play Coit more. He's just got other guys." And yeah, I think that the way that looks right now, and there's obviously a ton of time for it to change, but the way that looks right now, that's going to end up being a bad decision.
Yeah.
And you know what I'll bet happens? AJ Storr
next year.
He'll hit the transfer portal again.
Probably before the end of the season if it stays like this. I mean, I would be surprised, to be honest.
He doesn't look together. I would agree with that. And see, this is let that be a lesson. And don't take this as an argument against the portal overall with a broad brush. But what it should tell you is you can't tell when you add guys this way to an equation, You just never know for sure how it's going to go. So if you look at Kansas and you say, well, you know what? Sure looks like Zeke Mayo's adjusting really well out of the portal, even though he didn't score a ton today. He still did things to help him win, and he's been shooting the lights out the 2 games before that. I would say that Griffin played decently today and has played decently so far.
Yeah.
So, there are additions that work out. But my point is, even with a guy like AJ Storr, where you say, well, look, this guy was an all Big Ten caliber player at Wisconsin. He's
Right.
now going to a team where he's surrounded by better talent. Yeah, maybe his scoring numbers might drop a couple points because he's sharing shots with guys, but in no way would anybody have expected this. But it happens.
Yeah.
It's not a video game. I say that all the time, but it's true. It's not. These are real people, and you can't always easily predict how it will go.
Yeah.
For Kansas's sake, I think they're going to hope that he starts to figure it out, but you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So then the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids sponsors are Who Cleans the Glass Best for Michigan State. The Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, obviously based in Grand Rapids area, great way to get your windows cleaned. And they also do all sorts of other things. They power wash your house, but they're basically getting up on the ladders. I took care of another guy the other day, fell off a ladder. Please just stay off the ladder. Let the professionals get on the ladders, especially if you're a little bit older guy. It doesn't take very long fall to break your ankle or break some ribs. So be careful. Call the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. They can take care of all those things. Great pricing, super nice guys. They go out any type of weather. They'll clean the inside and the outside of the windows, the screens, all that stuff. And they do fantastic work and they get it squeaky clean. And so let's see. You had Jaxon Kohler. He did lead the team with rebounding 10.
There it
So that
is.
ties us up at 1 apiece. And it's starting to look a little bit like Jaxon Kohler heavy here. I had Jaden Akins who
Yeah.
finished with 1. From a rebounding standpoint, Michigan State was out rebounded 47-43. I don't feel like they did a bad job rebounding. It just,
No, they
it
didn't.
was,
They didn't.
and they certainly gave plenty of long rebounds that went to Kansas primarily. And Kansas did a really good job securing those long rebounds for all those really bad
They
3-point
did.
shots.
They
So,
did.
I mean,
They did.
hats off to Kansas in that respect, because that can also turn the wrong way on you as well. So,
Absolutely. Well, there was one sequence where one of those went long. It ended up in a transition opportunity for Kansas. And
yeah,
Billis pointed out, he said, that's one, if it goes the other way, you're likely giving up another wide open 3 and it can kill you. But if you get it, then you're off to the races. And that is exactly how it went. I agree. Kansas did a good job holding down Michigan State's perimeter guys from being able to track down more of those misses than they did. With Jaxon Kohler, look, I fondly, and there's a whole history of this stuff. I remember when Drew Namick wasn't a Big Ten caliber athlete until he
yeah,
got
right.
comfortable, and then he was arguably the most athletic center Tom Izzo's had. Um, Jaxon Kohler, it was for 2 years. Oh, he's a terrible rebounder. He can't rebound.
Yeah,
And I never understood it because honestly, the harder thing to do, in my opinion, is to offensive rebound. You can become a solid defensive rebounder as a big man, I think, if your motor's up sufficiently and you're
mm-hmm.
executing with good technique in terms of finding a body and checking out, that's something that you can do. And Jackson's made strides on that end, but he always displayed a knack for offensive rebounding. That he had 4 in this game. That's not a shocker. I
No,
mean, now we've said, that this team's improved offensive rebounding looks like it may be by committee as opposed to one guy being an Antonio Smith wrecking ball. And I still think that's mostly the case. But boy, Jack, 4 rebounds against that opponent on the offensive end, that's good stuff.
yeah, absolutely. And again, that's brought to you by the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. If you want to get 15% off as a listener to the show, mention Final Four when you get your estimate, and you can find the link to that as well at our support page at tffinots.com/support. Call them today. You'll be glad you did. And that also brings us next to the Nudge Printing 5 keys of the game for Michigan State. Obviously brought to you by Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. If you need Spartan apparel, it's our favorite for our family. Super comfortable. Screen printing. So it handles lots of washes. It looks great many times after we've had a couple for a few years and it still looks just great. So again, you want to go to Nudge Printing. They have a huge selection of things, whether it's apparel. They've got the stickers for cornhole, stickers for your fatheads, like stickers for your wall. Then they have all kinds of different schools too, not only just Michigan State, but they have all the cool Michigan State logos, the old Gruff Sparties, even stuff like from the 1960s, some really old stuff. So you want some really cool vintage stuff. Nudge Printing is your place to go. You can check out their selection. You get 20% off as a listener to the show. Just mention Final Four. That's just one word when you go to checkout, and you can get that discount, and you'll really appreciate everything you get. All right. So the first key to the game was tempo. And I think unquestionably Michigan State plays with the temp. They play the great tempo like they have before. They were pushing as much as they could. I don't think there were many opportunities where they didn't break when they could. And they finished with 18 fast
18.
break points. Pretty
Yeah.
good considering Kansas was, committed to not doing that, to not allowing them to
Yeah,
break.
I
So
thought
that
I
was pretty
did
good.
think Kansas was better. That I mean, North Carolina, they seriously, they just the it was funny because North Carolina actually only got credited with 17 fast break points in that game, but it seemed worse, mostly because I think so much of it came in one half. But Kansas at times in that game was awful.
Mhm.
I I didn't think they were awful. I just
No.
thought Michigan State pushed it, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, once again, I mean, Kansas is generally going to be a good. We'll see where this team checks in when it's all said and done. But historically, Bill Self's teams guard pretty well in the half court, and so the fact that once again Michigan State was able to play a game where almost never were they in super late clock situations.
Right.
That's also a big part of it. But I did think in this game to have a chance, they needed to really exploit Kansas in transition. And I thought they did that well enough to give themselves a chance to win. So that was a positive.
The second key to the game was to attack. The hope here was Michigan State was going to attack the rack and get a bunch of free throws. They're averaging 26 and a half free throws a game coming into the
Yeah.
game, and they had 21 in this game. We could
Yep.
quibble over they should have had a few more, but either way, not only did they get there, but they really hit them too. They had 18 of 21, so they really kept themselves in the game by hitting 86% from the line.
That's another big deal. And you look at it, Frankie Fidler 8 for 8. Jeremy Fears was actually one of the culprits. He was 3 for 5. Um, Kohler 1 for 1, Carr 2 for 2, Richardson 1 for 1, Cooper 2 for 3, Holloman 1 for 1. So a lot of guys chipped in with Frankie obviously doing the most damage, but I can't complain.
No.
North Carolina got 31 free throw attempts in that game at Allen Fieldhouse, and it was shocking that they got that all in that building. But it was most of it. I watched that game. I mean, most of it was earned. Like, Carolina was aggressive and Kansas for long stretches could not defend without fouling. And I thought in this game, Michigan State really earned those 21 free throws. Those were not gimmies. So I'm pretty happy with what Michigan State did. You'd always like to have a few more, but it's a huge area of improvement for this team.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure.
there's just it's obvious. Those two things we just mentioned. Transition offense, pace of play in general, and getting to the free throw line are huge areas of improvement. Now, if you think they're going to shoot 15% from three for the whole season, okay, that might not be enough to get them where they want to go. But I don't think they're going to. And when
Yeah.
you combine better 3-point shooting with what they're doing in those areas, assuming that stays consistent, which I think it has a great chance to do, you see why I'm optimistic about this team from an offensive point of view.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
I just think there, what it comes down to, what both of those things produce. Playing fast, especially in transition, but playing fast in general, and attacking and getting to the rim. You know what it does? It means you get easy points.
Yeah. Right.
And they are just getting much easier points this year.
Yep. All right. So we had check. Now things are going to go south here a little bit as we go to the third key of the game was the deep ball. I mean,
Yeah.
As bad as Michigan State shot the first game and the second game, they were much worse today. They were 3 for 24, miserable. What's that, 12% or something, 12.5%.
Yeah.
Uh,
13%. We'll round up.
yeah, terrible. And this is a whole point with the Dickinson, right? You're like, well, we can take Dickinson scoring a bunch of points, but we have to be able to score when he's on there. And they definitely exploit him a couple times, not from a 3-point
Oh, I
standpoint, but
thought they didn't win that exchange,
yeah,
but all that pick and roll stuff that Michigan State got, that was on Hunter Dickinson.
yeah. But
That's a direct result of that. So they got theirs against him, not as much as I would have hoped for. Specific to 3-point shooting, I don't know
and I
if
would say this too about the 3-point shooting too, real quickly,
yeah.
is their 3-point shots attempts were way easier than Kansas's. Like, I
Yeah,
mean,
they were.
wide open.
Yep.
For the most part, and just, and guys who can shoot. It's not, I'm Cone Carr. Okay. I don't expect him to make that, but everybody else like wide open, and they're just, I mean, really bad bricks.
Mostly. I thought that, anytime you take 24 threes, which for Michigan State is more than you want to take.
Yeah.
In a normal game, not just a game where you can't hit them. I thought there were a few, they got into stretches where I think they were so desperate to see the ball go through the basket that they were taking ones that were maybe not perfectly in rhythm. There was a little bit of that, but for the
they're
most
open,
part,
though.
yeah, they were. You're right. They weren't launching many that were well contested. You could say that.
Yeah.
Look, I think with regard to the pick and roll stuff in Dickinson, I do think, with Jeremy, he's not a reliable enough shooter. And to his credit, he's not just going to take those shots.
Right.
So that means, and I wondered about this, but he was playing so well, you couldn't play it any other way. But I had wondered, maybe that means Michigan State tries to do more with Trey Holloman or Jace Richardson, or even put the ball in Jaden Aiken's hands for screen and roll action up top. And they didn't really look to do very much of that. They weren't really looking to exploit that for getting to generate open threes from the ball handler in those situations. And, frankly, the way it was going for everybody, that was probably for the best, because they might have thrown 30 of them up there without hitting. But yeah, overall, look, the only thing I can say as a defense is, we said, if either team has a big edge here, that will go a long way toward earning a victory for them. Kansas did have an edge.
Not a big one, but
they made
either,
5. Yeah, not a huge edge, but 2 more made threes in a game like this. That's 6 points, and you have an 8-point margin in the end. It was important. Kansas, keep in mind, Kansas came in shooting 39.5% from 3. Michigan State held them under 30. So
yeah.
Kansas
I think they
wasn't great either.
They were defending the threes a lot better too.
Well.
I mean, unlike Michigan State's, that's why I think the quality of shots, Michigan State's are much better. They just were missing wide open ones, and whatever.
Yeah, totally agree.
Fourth key to the game is Dickinson. Hunter had a really, really good game. As you mentioned, he was hitting some outside shots a little bit. He's 28 points, 13 for 21.
Mid-range shots. He hit one.
I mean, he hit one three. Yeah, but he had a couple mid-range. Hit like 6-foot jumps and jump hooks and stuff. So 13 for 21 from the field. Hit his 1 3-point attempt, 1 for 4 from the line, which is bad. But 12 rebounds, 3 of them offensive, assist, turnover, block, 3 steals, and those steals almost came all in the first 2 minutes of the game. It's kind of weird.
They were. It was a weird deal.
35 minutes. He played almost the whole game, mainly because of foul trouble with Bedunga behind him. And so, anyway,
one more reason. Yes, foul trouble, but it wasn't just that. It was also that I think Bill Self figured out Hunter Dickinson is the one thing he had working for him.
That's true.
It's true.
Yeah, right.
It's true. And for long stretches of that game, it was the only thing he had working for him. And so I think he felt, rightly so, that he had to play him. It was going to be very difficult to get a win if they didn't play him a ton of minutes. And to his credit, he does look like he's in a little better shape than he was at Michigan. And I think he's conditioned probably a little better than he was there. And so the fact that he was able to play those 35 minutes and not really see any kind of a drop off, that's That's a big break. That's a big positive for them. Um, the way we characterized it in the pregame was what you hope to do is you hope to make them pay for him defensively more than
Right.
he hurts you. That clearly did not happen. I did think Michigan State exploited him at times, several times in pick and roll. The only argument you make is maybe they should have tried to do even more of it. But um, but I thought they did make them pay, just not enough,
Yeah.
because he was so efficient offensively. And again, just a really well played game on his part. I did not think that was a game like one or two others I've seen him play against MSU in the past, where, okay, he's just physically swallowing these guys up in the post and that's it. This was a game where he actually really had to display a skill set. And I thought he did that.
And so the fifth and final key to the game was chances to score, which was basically, is there going to be an edge for Michigan State either on an offensive glass, getting extra attempts to score, or through turnovers? And they're basically both even. And both teams had about 25% offensive rebounding rate, which is not good. So they're both defensively
Yeah.
rebounded well. They both had 11 turnovers. So there's really no edge there. Or I guess Kansas had 10 turnovers, but
Yeah.
essentially they both had 69 shots from the field. Kansas just made
Well,
three more of them, and some of them were threes, or four more. There got a
yep.
couple of threes, less
It's
free
it's
throws, but yeah.
it's a miracle that Michigan State ended that game with 11 turnovers, because with the start, you mentioned it,
Oh my gosh, like
Dickinson had 3 steals in the first
they
maybe
had
four or
like
five
five turnovers in
minutes.
the first, or like
Yeah.
four turnovers, I think in the first 6, 7 minutes. We see that sometimes,
No, they had five.
these
They had
games.
five very early. They
Yeah,
had five within the first 5 minutes, um, and then they just settled in. And the thing that was frustrating about it was they were all bad turnovers, which is exactly what we talked about.
yeah,
You don't mind if they're sins of commission. If you're trying to make plays, you're trying to get in transition, and somebody ends up bobbling the ball, it doesn't make a clean catch as they're going up to try to dunk it, something like that. Okay. You live with that. You're trying to make a play. But the stuff that's just kind of fogged out, you know, and that's what those first few were. But to their credit, and this is what I give, especially not solely Jeremy Fears, but especially Jeremy Fears, a lot of credit for it, because he's the point guard and he settled that thing down. And yeah, I think the fact that Michigan State was able to play it evenly off to that kind of start was impressive. But as you say, they weren't able to get any kind of edge. And I thought there was a chance. Well, there was a chance they might be able to carve out a little bit of an edge on the glass. And they really weren't able to do it. I think we've diagnosed part of the reason that was the case. Michigan State was giving up a ton of long rebounds, and Kansas's perimeter guys were doing a really good job of chasing them down and not letting Michigan State get second chances.
yeah.
So yeah, let's put it this way: when you combined this with the 3-point shooting, it just wasn't. They could have overcome the 3-point shooting if they'd managed to carve out a significant edge here, but that didn't happen. Instead, it was played basically even.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, and that's kind of the name of the game.
Well, I think we'll leave it there. Another Champions Classic goes by the wayside, and of course, just as a reminder, it is November, and so the Michigan State still has. I say they have at least what, like a 25% chance to make the tournament. Would you say that, Rod?
Yeah, we go through
It's hard
this
to get.
sauna dance every year. We'll be right back to it when they're in Maui, and that's a tough field.
Yeah,
And they're probably going to have a game or two against a top 10 opponent. It kind of looks that way. And it's an opportunity to get better. It's an opportunity to get a level check. If you win, you feel good about where you're at, but it doesn't guarantee anything, as we've seen in
yeah.
recent years.
Kentucky, that double overtime win over Kentucky, and
Yeah,
right.
it's that they beat Villanova that year, and you felt really good about it at the time. Um, you go back. I go back to the Champions Classic, the COVID year. They went to Cameron Indoor and beat Duke, who was top 10 at the time. Duke didn't make the NCAA tournament.
Right. Yeah.
So, that's the point. Like even when you win these games, you don't know for sure what you've got. And we could find out, maybe Kansas ends up disappointing. I don't think they will, but I think this is going to be one that kind of holds up, that you feel like, well, that was a tough opponent. And, we played hard, we battled, and we were very competitive. We just didn't get it done, but we learned some things. That's all you're really after in these games. You don't want to play poorly, but Michigan State did not play poorly on balance in this game. They just didn't do one thing very well, and it bit them.
Yeah.
But they did a lot of positive things that gave them a chance to win.
All right, we'll leave it there, and we'll be back with our pregame for the Bowling Green, which will be the next game for Michigan State. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.